Hey guys, Alex here with another episode of Momentum Charting. If you are new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Please take one quick second, jump down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. Doing both of those things is the only way to ensure you do not miss a single update of FCEL over the coming days and weeks. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this video. Let's dive in here to the chart of FuelCell. It's been a little while since our last update, so I figured it's a good time to give the community my thoughts on what is going on here with FCEL. Guys, last time we left off, I'm here on the daily time frame on FCEL in TradingView, and the big thing to me that was sort of the takeaway from the last video was that yes, we were indeed looking for a potential bottom in these areas, but, and there was a big caveat to that, I clearly stated that if we were to get a pump in price, I think I said somewhere between maybe 15 and 25%, something like that, it would definitely be a good idea to secure some of those short-term gains and get ready for a drawdown in price and start potentially some reaccumulation of shares with those profits in the short term. And it kind of worked out like that. You guys know I'm a fan of this stock. Been beaten down hard over the last since February, six months now. It's just been an awful ride. But the problem we've got here on FuelCell, so let's I just want to see exactly what this thing pumped from August 5th to August 10th, so a period of about 5 days. We just had this really nice run to the upside in prices at 40%, which was really extraordinary. And guys, just keep in mind always when you get these stocks that have been beaten down so badly, irregardless of what I'm going to show you from the daily time frame, stuff like that. If you get in a short-term time frame a stock that's been beaten down a number of months to the tune of 80, 90, more than that percentage, and you get a short-term pop to the upside between maybe 20 and 40%, it is never a bad idea to consider, at least consider, taking some short-term profits on that position, holding, waiting for the pullback, which is very likely to come. Remember, stocks do not go up in a straight line. That was the big takeaway from the last video. There has been so much technical damage done to FuelCell. This recovery process, this healing process of the technical damage that's been done in this stock since February, it's going to take some time to recover. So a short-term pop to the upside of 40+%, definitely an area where you would want to consider taking some short-term profits and waiting for a pullback and maybe accumulating more shares, instead of just watching what happened here, this entire run to the upside from 595 to 827, almost dissipated completely. Just a shame here what happened, but it's very typical with stocks. Let's just take a look at this daily time frame here and just see what we're seeing. So when we look at a stock, what we always want to do is we want to get a broad picture of overall what's happening, and then kind of dive in more granularly, try to get a short-term trader's perspective also, and if you can get those two scenarios to match, aka a trend that is working nicely in the long term, a daily time frame, as well as a short-term trend that is working in your favor, an hourly 30-minute trend, something like that. If you can combine those two things, you have a very high degree of success of a trend continuing, price expansion, prices moving higher in the short term. Now, if you're saying, okay, well, I have a very bearish long-term trend, but I'm trying to match that with a short-term trend that I see moving to the upside, yes, definitely within these long-term bearish moves on stocks, there are big pops in prices, but you always have to be very, very careful and very, very cognizant of the long-term trends, which are, you can think of like gigantic cruise liners or a gigantic battleship in the ocean. When you are trying to turn that thing around and go in the opposite direction, it takes time, guys. We're not talking about a car or something that can turn on a dime and go the other direction. This is something big and bulky, and just takes time and effort to turn this ship and get it headed in the opposite direction. And that is kind of what the analogy I will use on FuelCell. That is where we're at. Just this is like a gigantic cruise liner, and we are working to try to turn this thing back in our favor, get momentum back to the upside, but it is going to take time to repair this damage and get this thing headed in the right direction. So yes, on a long-term daily time frame, the trend, guys, the trend on FuelCell is very, very clearly still to the downside. You've got all these important moving averages. You've got the 200, the 125, the 50, all still here in an alignment that are pointing very strongly to the downside, right? And in addition, you've got this very clear line of overhead resistance on the points. We've got 12th March 2021. We've got 2nd March 2021. We've got 8th of June 2021. And guys, you can see why it's so important to draw these trend lines. And price action in stocks, I say it time and time again, the markets are always trying to tell you what they're trying to do with the price of a stock ahead of time, and give you some general idea of what is about to happen in the price of a stock or in an equity. And these guys, these things do not happen by coincidence. They do not happen by accident. Look where I drew this trend line at, and look where prices on this most recent move to the upside hit. They hit right, like, perfectly within what? Within a penny of this trend line that I set here, this downward overhead sloping trend line. Prices came up, tagged that trend line, and the very next day started just breaking down again. This is, again, a daily time frame. So that's why I draw in these trend lines and why they are so important in determining the overall trend of a stock. And I like to use daily for the longer term. I find it to be extremely helpful, extremely useful. That's what I always try to do when I look at a broad picture of a stock, is try to see where that daily trend is moving. If I don't clearly see where the daily trend is moving, I want to make sure that there's a very clear short-term trend line in place before I enter a swing position on the stock. So here with FuelCell, trend since March, very, very clearly here, still to the downside. It's not only this trend line, but you've got this configuration here of moving averages that are still pushing brutally to the downside. So yes, definitely, guys, we are still hunting a bottom here somewhere in these areas. I'm still holding out some sort of hope, although I'm not positive that this 593 level is going to hold. Maybe something above that, maybe something below it. I would love to see that, but guys, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not really loving what I'm seeing here right now. This is our dynamic RSI chart. We came up here to the upside, and you can see we are kind of still in this kind of middling area of RSI, which is an okay area to work from, but, and this is a takeaway that's always important too. Not only does it depend where you are currently at on the RSI, it's also sometimes very important, not sometimes, always very important to pay attention to where you are coming from. And these areas where this most recent cycle, RSI cycle, started from, down in the low 20s, 26, 28, 29. These are not great areas for a long-term push to the upside in a stock. So what I'm saying is, if this cycle ends somewhere down here and pushes back into these areas, we are going to expect prices on fuel cell to continue lower from here. So these areas on the dynamic RSI are definitely not great areas to be launching an attack on this trend line from. So just having said that, yeah, this is not a fantastic, even though we are again in a sort of neutral area of RSI right now, we are currently pointing to the downside. You can see that here, working from an area that's not that great, potentially sort of mid-cycle here, maybe on this RSI, and potentially this thing is potentially, if it rolls over, coming back to these zones here around the mid-20s. Not good for the price action of fuel cell. What I would like to see, what I need to see, is for this area to break to the upside in RSI. Okay, what we need to have happen in this RSI, let's just clear away some of this clutter so you guys can see this a little bit more easily and demonstrate a little bit more clearly what we need to have happen. What we need to have happen, you see how this previously was a launching pad for our RSI attack on this cycle. We need to, instead of this having this area as a launch pad, we need to have this area above this 51 zone. So we need to break above this area and start putting in some sort of a structure in this area and start working in this area. Now this is a formation that we can find useful and have the ability for fuel cell to break this trend line and start moving in a decent fashion to the upside, potentially breaking this 125 EMA, this 200 moving average, and getting prices back above this just awful bearish configuration of moving averages and this downward sloping daily trend line. So guys, that's basically everything I'm looking at right now on fuel cell. Yeah, so long term right now the configuration bearish. Let's look at the 30-minute here. Maybe find something constructive we can find here. And yeah, unfortunately guys, here on this was another reason to be very skeptical, okay, of this push up in prices, this 40% pop we had between August 5th and August 10th. You can see here this dynamic trend right here. You see this blue line and this green line. This is the 250 EMA and the dynamic trend. When you've got this dynamic trend like this that's red and pushing to the downside, and it's below, working below this 250 EMA, this is a very bearish short-term trend, okay? So that's another reason to have been very skeptical of this move to the upside in fuel cell, potentially hunting profit taking. But that's all stuff in the past, right? Where are we at now? Yeah, where we're at now is not changed much. Unfortunately, you can still see the configuration of our dynamic trend and 250 EMA still pushing down to the downside in a fairly ugly fashion. I've just got this sort of token line of support here drawn in. I do not know for sure if that's going to hold. I certainly hope so. I do not know for sure, but we've got an alignment right now, long-term bearish alignment on fuel cell. Short-term, the 30-minute trend broken to the downside. This is what I've got right now lined up as our most current 30-minute trend line of overhead resistance right here. If we were to come over here, break out at around this price of $5.92 or something like that, we do have a chance here to start a channel and maybe get another push to the upside, make another run at this overhead trend line. Again, keep in mind this trend line is going to be a very good potentially area to take profits until we can break through it and do some sort of retest, get some structure here, and then continue breaking to the upside. But just keep this daily trend line in mind, guys, okay? But right now, a long-term price is pushing to the downside. 30-minute, shorter-term time frame, price is in a bearish alignment here. On the, let's see, take a look at this RSI here. Yeah, nothing great happening. Maybe getting close to a bottom here, but still RSI on a 30-minute in a very bearish zone. We could potentially head lower. So yeah, guys, this is a stock that is going to take some time, and I'm hoping sooner rather than later we start getting some real repair of this damage that's been done. But the first goalpost that we really do need to cross here for a change in direction of this bearish momentum that has just not gone away in FuelCell in 6 months is going to be for us to break above this daily downward moving overhead resistance. And I think that the next potential area, I'm over here on the chart that we do like to use quite often, momentum chart. I'm on a daily time frame. I think our next opportunity to the upside, which may also correspond with a break to the upside of that overhead daily resistance, that would be fantastic. If we can somehow here, guys, get this within the next 3-4 weeks of trading, somehow get a move, a break, at least in the short term, just to give us some bullish momentum to possibly break to the outside of that daily overhead resistance on the daily chart. I think this is going to represent our next opportunity. If we can get this daily, this hourly momentum to break this overhead resistance, that would give us some relief in prices, I think, at least in the short term. But again, would very, very likely represent an area, an opportunity in the short term for profit taking, paying careful attention to the momentum top in these zones when we are to break this overhead line of resistance, and maybe get set for a reset in prices, accumulate more shares, and start getting some momentum that's working above this zero area so we can gain control back of FuelCell and eventually get this gigantic ship turned in the right direction and prices, momentum, everything like that working back to the upside in FuelCell after this pretty awful last 6 months in this stock. So guys, that's basically the entirety of my update today for FuelCell. I want to thank you very, very much for watching. I also want to encourage you to make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you aren't. I do updates on different stocks, all your favorite stocks in the market, broad markets, really unique insight, something you won't find anywhere else on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification. Make sure you are notified each and every time I upload an update on FuelCell, plus every other stock chart I am watching in the broad market. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, and I will see everybody again very shortly in the next update. Bye for now.